Bran stood inside the dark trailer as it rumbled along the country road. He was a Shire horse, tall and heavy, with broad shoulders and a calm face that made people feel safe. His coat was dark brown with a lighter patch on his forehead, and his legs were thick like tree trunks, feathered with long hair that collected dust from the farmyard. He had lived most of his life in the same place, pulling loads, walking slow and steady, and listening to the same voices every day. The trailer smelled of old wood and metal. The floor vibrated under Bran's hooves with every bump. He shifted his weight carefully, keeping his balance the way he had learned from years of work. He did not panic. He never did. Even now, when the air felt strange and the road felt wrong, he remained quiet. He only blinked slowly and breathed out through his nose, as if patience could solve anything. Outside, the world passed in thin slices of light through the cracks. Bran saw fields, fences, and a few trees that leaned with winter wind. He also saw Tom's farm fade behind them earlier, the place where he had grown old. Tom had stood there with his hands on the trailer door, not meeting Bran's eyes. Tom had smelled like worry. That smell had been getting stronger for weeks. Tom was not a cruel man. He was tired. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes and makes every choice feel heavy. The farm had been struggling for months. Bills stacked up on the kitchen table. The tractor needed repairs Tom could not afford. The hay price rose. The work grew harder, and Bran grew slower. Bran had known the change before Tom said a word. Horses notice everything. Bran noticed how Tom moved in short, sharp steps lately, how he spoke less, how he sometimes stood in the barn and stared without seeing. Bran noticed the way Tom's wife, May, started counting coins and whispering at night. Bran noticed how the boy, Ben, stopped laughing when he brushed Bran's mane, as if laughter might break something. In better days, Bran was the farm's pride. People in town had admired him at fairs. Tom would tell stories about Bran's strength, about how he could pull a loaded wagon through mud when the truck got stuck. Bran had been the kind of horse that made you feel like the world was still solid and simple. But time changed that. Bran's knees ached in the cold. His breathing was heavier after long pulls. He could still work, but not like before. Tom tried to hide it, tried to pretend the farm could hold on, but the truth crept in like water under a door. The morning Bran was loaded into the trailer, the sky was pale. Frost covered the fence rails. Ben had come into the barn early with a brush and a blanket. He stood close to Bran's side, pressing his cheek into the horse's warm shoulder. Ben's hands shook as he ran the brush through Bran's mane. "Don't go," Ben whispered, as if the horse could choose. May stood in the doorway, holding a mug she never drank from. Her eyes were red. Tom was outside, talking to the driver in a low voice. The driver wore a cap pulled down low and avoided looking into the barn. Bran watched Tom with gentle, trusting eyes. Tom could not look back. He kept checking the paper in his hands, as if reading it again might change its meaning. When the moment came, Tom led Bran out with a rope. Bran followed without hesitation. He had followed Tom through storms, through hard seasons, through long days. Why would he stop now? At the trailer, Ben grabbed the rope, trying to hold on. Tom placed a hand on Ben's shoulder and gently moved him aside. Ben began to cry, but he did not make a sound at first. His mouth opened, and the air came out, but his voice stayed trapped. Bran stepped up into the trailer. The floor creaked under his weight. Tom closed the door fast, as if speed could make it easier. Then he turned away, wiping his face with the back of his hand. The truck pulled out, and the farm disappeared behind a turn. Bran stood steady as the journey carried him farther from everything he knew. Hours passed. The road changed from dirt to smoother pavement. The air grew colder. Bran heard other vehicles passing, heard horns, heard the distant sound of a town. He smelled things he did not recognize, sharp and heavy smells that made his ears flick forward and back. When the truck finally slowed, Bran felt a shift in the air. The driver turned into a wide entrance lined with tall fences. The gates were metal. The ground under the tires changed to gravel. The sound was different now, louder, harsher. Bran's nostrils widened. He smelled fear, not his own, but something in the place itself. It was like an old memory stuck in the wood and metal. He heard the low sounds of other animals somewhere nearby. Not screams, not anything loud, just uneasy noises and movement. It made the hair along his neck lift slightly. The trailer stopped. The driver climbed down and walked toward a small office. Bran waited, calm but alert. He shifted once and lowered his head as if to rest, but he did not relax fully. A few minutes later, 2 workers came to the trailer. One was older, with a thick coat and rough gloves. The other was younger, slim, with a face that still looked unsure in a place like this. The younger one carried a clipboard. His name tag read Liam. Liam looked up at the trailer and then at the paper. He frowned for a moment and then forced his face back into a blank expression. The older worker, Mark, tapped the trailer door with his knuckles. "Big one," Mark said. "Yeah," Liam replied. His voice sounded quieter than it should. They opened the trailer door. Cold air rushed in. Bran blinked and stepped back half a pace, then steadied. Mark lifted the rope and clicked his tongue, guiding Bran down. Bran stepped carefully onto the ground, his hooves crunching gravel. He was tall enough that Liam had to tilt his head back slightly to look at him. Bran's size drew attention. A few people nearby glanced over. Most just kept walking, busy, as if they had learned not to notice too much. But Liam kept looking. He stared at Bran's shoulder, where a faded mark sat beneath the hair. It was not obvious, but it was there, like a stamp that time had tried to erase. "Did you see that?" Liam asked quietly. Mark shrugged. "Just an old mark. Get him moved." Liam didn't move right away. He stepped closer, careful, respectful. Bran turned his head, meeting Liam's eyes. There was no anger there, no wild fear, just a steady look that made Liam's throat tighten. Liam gently brushed the hair aside with his glove. The mark became clearer. It was not a random scar. It looked like a symbol, the kind used by breeders. Liam had grown up around horses. He had seen stamps like that on special draft horses at shows, years ago. He looked down at the paper again. The sheet listed Bran as an ordinary farm horse, no history, no special record. Liam felt a small discomfort in his chest. He could not explain it fully, but something about the mark and the paperwork did not match. "Mark," Liam said, a little firmer, "I think we should check this." Mark sighed. "We check every animal. That's the job." "No," Liam said, and his voice surprised even him. "I mean check the mark. It looks like a breeder stamp." Mark stared at him, annoyed. "You want to waste time on a stamp." Liam held the clipboard tighter. He thought of walking away. He thought of doing what he was told. He thought of how this place ran, how everything moved fast and quiet, how questions were not welcome. Then Bran shifted his weight, and the chain on the stall gate nearby clinked. The sound snapped Liam back into the moment. Bran was standing right there, alive, calm, trusting. Liam swallowed. "Just 2 minutes," he said. "If I'm wrong, we move on." Mark muttered something under his breath, but he waved a hand. "Fine. 2 minutes." Liam walked toward the office window where a phone hung on the wall. His hands felt cold even through his gloves. He did not know why he cared so much. Maybe it was the horse's eyes. Maybe it was the stamp. Maybe it was simply the feeling that a small choice could matter. He dialed a number he remembered from an old contact list. A registry line. A horse program that had been mentioned once during training, something about draft horse preservation. Liam expected no answer or a busy tone. Instead, someone picked up. Liam cleared his throat. "Hi," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm calling about a Shire horse with a breeder stamp. I need to confirm a mark." There was a pause on the other end. Then the voice asked, "What symbol?" Liam looked back at Bran, brushed the hair once more, and read the shape carefully. His heart began to beat faster. Because the symbol on Bran's shoulder was not just any stamp. It was one Liam had only seen in pictures. And if he was right, this horse did not belong here at all. Liam stood near the office wall holding the phone tightly. The cold air of the yard pressed against his face, but his mind felt far away. On the other end of the line, the voice had gone quiet after he described the symbol. That silence felt heavier than any loud answer. "Can you repeat that?" the voice finally asked. Liam did. Slowly and clearly. He described the curve of the mark, the faded lines, the way it sat on the shoulder of the horse. As he spoke, he looked back at Bran. The horse stood calmly near the fence, his head lowered, breathing slow and steady. Mark was nearby, tapping his boot against the ground, clearly impatient. The voice on the phone grew serious. It asked for the horse's size, color, age, and where he came from. Liam answered as best as he could. He shared the name on the paper, the farm location, and the delivery record. With every detail, the voice seemed more certain. "That horse was reported missing years ago," the voice said. "He belongs to a preserved bloodline. If the stamp matches, he should never have been sent here." Liam felt his chest tighten. He asked what he should do next. The voice told him to stop everything and keep the horse safe until officials could arrive. The call ended shortly after. Liam lowered the phone slowly. His hands trembled. He turned and walked back toward Bran. Mark noticed his face and frowned. "What now?" Mark asked. Liam took a breath. "We need to stop. This horse might be part of a protected line. The papers could be wrong." Mark laughed once, short and sharp. "You serious?" "Yes," Liam said. His voice was quiet but firm. "They're sending someone to check." Mark stared at him for a long moment. The yard felt still, like even the air was listening. Finally, Mark shook his head and waved his hand. "Fine," he said. "We wait. But if this is nothing, you explain it." Bran was led into a quiet stall away from the noise. The space was cleaner than most, with fresh water and a thick layer of straw. Liam stayed nearby, watching as Bran lowered his head and drank. The horse seemed tired, but not afraid. It was as if he trusted that this pause meant something good. Time moved slowly. Sounds from the yard continued, but Bran's stall remained calm. Liam brushed some dirt from Bran's neck, careful and gentle. He noticed old scars from years of work, signs of a long life spent serving humans without complaint. As Liam worked, memories from his childhood surfaced. He had grown up near a small horse farm. His grandfather used to talk about Shire horses, about their strength and kindness. He used to say that some animals carried history in their bones. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, a car pulled through the gates. Two people stepped out. One was an older woman with gray hair tied back neatly. The other was a man carrying a folder thick with papers. They walked straight toward Bran's stall. Liam stepped aside as they approached. The woman studied Bran closely, her eyes moving with care. She brushed aside the hair over his shoulder and leaned in. Her breath caught. "It's him," she said softly. The man opened the folder and compared photos and records. He nodded slowly. "No doubt." Mark stood back, his face pale. "So the papers were wrong." "Yes," the woman replied. "This horse was registered decades ago. He was part of a preservation group that disbanded. Records were lost during a transfer. He was never meant to disappear." Liam felt a wave of relief rush through him. He had been right to pause, right to question. The woman turned to Liam. "You did the right thing." Those words settled deep in his chest. Arrangements were made quickly. Bran was officially removed from the list. No further action would take place. Instead, a transport was requested to move him to a holding farm until a permanent place could be arranged. While this happened, someone made a call to Tom. Tom was sitting at his kitchen table when the phone rang. The house felt empty without the sound of hooves in the yard. Ben sat across from him, staring at nothing. May was washing the same cup again and again at the sink. When Tom answered, he expected a routine call. Paperwork. Confirmation. Something final. Instead, the voice said the words slowly, carefully. The horse you sent. He is alive. Tom felt his heart stop for a moment. What do you mean? There was a mistake. He should not have been sent there. He is safe. Tom dropped into the chair. His hands shook so badly he had to grip the table. Ben looked up, confused. May turned around, her face white. He's alive, Tom said, barely able to speak. They say he's alive. Ben ran to him, tears filling his eyes. May covered her mouth and cried quietly. The voice on the phone explained everything. The stamp. The records. The pause that saved a life. Tom listened, feeling guilt and relief crash together inside him. I thought, Tom said, his voice breaking. I thought there was no other way. There is now, the voice replied. He will be moved to a preservation farm. You can visit if you wish. After the call ended, Tom sat in silence. The weight he had been carrying for months shifted. It did not disappear, but it felt lighter. Back at the facility, Bran was loaded into a different trailer. This one was clean and bright. Liam helped guide him inside. Before closing the door, Liam rested his hand briefly on Bran's neck. You're going somewhere better, he whispered. Bran turned his head slightly, his dark eye calm and steady. As the trailer pulled away, Liam watched until it disappeared beyond the gates. He knew he would remember this day for the rest of his life. A day when stopping for a moment changed everything. And as Bran traveled toward a new place, unaware of the danger he had escaped, the road ahead carried something he had not felt in a long time. A future. Bran traveled through the quiet countryside as the new trailer moved at a gentle pace. The road felt smoother than before, and the air inside was cleaner. Sunlight slipped in through the small side window, warming his back. He stood calmly, steady on his legs, as he had done all his life. He did not know where he was going, but the fear he had sensed earlier was gone. The driver this time spoke softly when he stopped. He checked the tires, the latch, and the water. He moved with care, not rushing. Bran listened to the sounds around him and felt a slow sense of ease settle in his chest. The trailer turned onto a long road lined with trees. Fields opened wide on both sides, green and quiet. Birds lifted from the grass as the truck passed. The smell of fresh earth reached Bran's nose, and he lowered his head slightly, breathing it in. It reminded him of mornings on the farm before worry filled the air. At the preservation holding farm, people were waiting. The gate opened wide, and the trailer rolled in slowly. The place felt different from the last one. There were no sharp sounds, no heavy smells of fear. The air felt open and calm. Bran stepped down onto soft ground. The grass was thick and cool beneath his hooves. A woman named Anna stood nearby, holding a rope loosely in her hand. Her movements were gentle. She did not pull or rush. She simply waited, letting Bran take his time. "Welcome," she said quietly, though she knew he could not understand the words. Her tone carried respect. Bran followed her toward a wide paddock. Other horses grazed nearby, lifting their heads briefly to watch him pass. They were strong and calm, like him. He felt no challenge, no tension. Just space. Anna brushed Bran carefully, cleaning the dust from his coat. As she worked, she noticed the old scars, the worn joints, the strength that still remained beneath the signs of age. She shook her head softly. "He worked hard," she said to the man beside her, Paul, who managed the farm. "Too hard for too long." Paul nodded. "He is safe now." Paperwork followed. Records were checked again. Photos were taken. Everything was documented this time with care. Bran stood quietly through it all, patient as ever. While Bran settled into his new space, Tom prepared for a journey of his own. He had not slept much since the call. Relief kept him awake, mixed with guilt that still pressed on his chest. He and May talked late into the night. Ben sat close, listening to every word. The next morning, Tom borrowed a neighbor's truck. The road ahead felt long, but his heart felt lighter than it had in months. Ben insisted on coming. He held onto a small brush in his lap the entire drive. When they arrived at the preservation farm, Anna met them at the gate. She led them across the fields toward Bran's paddock. Tom's steps slowed as they got closer. He saw the familiar shape standing in the grass, head lowered, mane moving gently in the breeze. "Bran," Tom whispered. Bran lifted his head. For a moment, nothing else existed. Bran's ears turned forward. His eyes focused. He took a few slow steps toward the fence. Tom stopped, his hands shaking. Tears filled his eyes before he could stop them. Ben ran ahead and pressed his hands against the fence. "He remembers us," he said, his voice breaking. Bran walked closer and lowered his head, breathing softly. Tom rested his forehead against the fence rail, unable to speak. He reached out and touched Bran's nose. The horse stayed still, calm and warm, just as he always had. "I'm sorry," Tom said quietly. "I didn't know what else to do." Anna watched from a distance, giving them space. She had seen reunions before, but this one carried a deep weight. Tom spent the afternoon learning about Bran's new life. He learned that Bran would not be asked to work again. He would live out his days in comfort, with care for his joints and plenty of space to move at his own pace. Visitors would learn about his history, about the importance of preserving animals like him. Tom felt pride and sadness at the same time. Pride that Bran mattered. Sadness that he had almost been lost. Before leaving, Tom promised to return. Ben hugged Bran's neck as far as his arms could reach. Bran stood quietly, breathing slow and steady. Back at the farm, life began to change in small ways. The fields felt empty without Bran, but the guilt that once filled the barn began to ease. Tom worked differently now. He asked for help when he needed it. He accepted support from neighbors who had always cared but never knew how to step in. Liam also felt the change. He returned to work the next day, but the place felt different to him now. He noticed more. He paused more. He asked questions where he once stayed quiet. Some people rolled their eyes. Others watched him with respect. One afternoon, Liam received a letter. Inside was a photo of Bran standing in the green field, sunlight on his back. A note was attached. "Thank you for stopping when it mattered." Liam held the photo for a long time. He pinned it above his desk. Weeks passed. Bran settled fully into his new routine. He learned the rhythm of the place, the sounds of morning feed, the quiet evenings. His body still ached at times, but care eased the pain. His eyes looked brighter. His steps, though slow, were confident. Visitors came and listened to his story. Children asked questions. Adults stood quietly, thinking about how close the world had come to losing something important. Bran did not know any of this. He simply lived. He grazed. He rested. He watched the sun rise and set over open land. And though his life had nearly taken a different path, one small pause had changed everything. The past was behind him now, and the days ahead were his. Bran's days at the preservation farm settled into a calm rhythm. Morning light arrived softly over the fields, and the sound of birds became his new alarm. Caretakers moved quietly, speaking in low voices, carrying feed and water with steady hands. Bran learned their steps and their smells. He learned that no one rushed him here. No one pulled hard on ropes or asked more than he could give. Anna visited him every morning. She checked his legs, brushed his coat, and spoke to him as if he were an old friend. Bran listened, his ears turning toward her voice. He did not understand the words, but he understood the care behind them. Paul kept careful notes about Bran's health. He arranged for gentle treatments to ease the stiffness in Bran's joints. Slow walks replaced heavy labor. Soft ground replaced hard floors. Over time, Bran began to move a little easier. His breathing felt lighter. His eyes, once dull with exhaustion, carried quiet strength again. News of Bran's story spread beyond the farm. People from nearby towns came to see him. Some came out of curiosity. Others came with respect. They stood by the fence and listened as Anna told the story of the stamp, the mistake, and the pause that saved a life. Children asked why Bran was special. Anna explained that sometimes history hides in unexpected places. She told them that care and attention could change outcomes. The children watched Bran closely, learning without realizing it. Tom returned often. Each visit felt different from the last. The first visits were heavy with regret. Later visits felt lighter. Tom spoke to Bran about the farm, about Ben's school, about May's garden. Bran stood quietly, his presence steady as always. One afternoon, Tom met Liam at the preservation farm. Liam had taken a day off to see Bran again. When the two men met, they shook hands in silence. Words felt small compared to what had happened. "You stopped," Tom finally said. "That's all it took." Liam nodded. "I almost didn't." Tom looked out at Bran standing in the field. "I'm glad you did." They watched Bran graze, the wind moving through his mane. Both men understood that life often turned on moments like that, moments so small they almost went unnoticed. As weeks passed, the preservation group made plans for the future. They decided Bran would become part of an education program. He would not be shown as an attraction, but as a reminder. A reminder of working animals, of responsibility, of choices. A small sign was placed near his paddock. It told his story in simple words. It spoke of his life of labor, the mistake that nearly ended him, and the pause that changed his path. Bran did not care about the sign. He cared about the grass, the quiet, and the familiar faces. He cared about the slow passing of days. One evening, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds gathered, and rain began to fall. The sound reminded Bran of old nights in the barn back home. He stood near the shelter, watching the rain touch the earth. Tom arrived unexpectedly that evening, soaked from the drive. He stood beside the fence, letting the rain fall on his shoulders. Bran walked closer, standing near him. The storm passed over them both. "I used to think strength meant holding on alone," Tom said softly. "Now I know it also means letting go when you must." Bran breathed out slowly, his warm breath mixing with the cool air. At the old farm, life continued to change. Tom sold some equipment and worked part-time with a neighbor. May began selling her baked goods at the local market. Ben helped after school and smiled more often. The absence of Bran still hurt, but the knowledge that he was safe made the loss bearable. Liam's work life changed as well. Others began to notice his careful approach. A few followed his example. The place did not transform overnight, but small pauses began to appear. Questions were asked. Checks were repeated. Lives quietly shifted. Bran aged gracefully. His movements slowed, but his days remained full. He rested often in the shade, listening to the wind and the distant sounds of the farm. Sometimes he stood watching visitors leave, their voices fading as they walked away. Anna often wondered what Bran remembered of his past. She believed he remembered kindness more than hardship. She believed animals carried memory in different ways. One afternoon, Anna brought Ben to help with brushing. Ben worked carefully, the same way he had back on the old farm. Bran stood still, trusting. "You're teaching him," Anna said. Ben looked up. "He taught me first." As the sun lowered, Bran stood quietly in the golden light. His shadow stretched across the grass, long and steady. The world felt calm around him. He had traveled far from the place where his path almost ended. Not because he fought. Not because he ran. But because someone chose to stop. And that choice continued to echo through every peaceful day that followed. Bran's final chapter unfolded slowly, the way all meaningful things do. Seasons passed over the preservation farm, each one leaving its mark. Spring brought soft grass and gentle rain. Summer followed with long warm days and quiet evenings. Autumn painted the fields gold, and winter arrived calm and steady, never harsh. Bran learned the rhythm of each season. He no longer measured time by work or commands. He measured it by sunlight, by the sound of footsteps, by the familiar voices that greeted him every morning. His body carried age, but his spirit felt settled. Anna noticed the change first. Bran rested more often now, choosing shade over open fields. His walks were shorter, but peaceful. There was no struggle in him. Only acceptance. Paul adjusted Bran's care with great attention. Softer feed. Warmer bedding. Extra time spent simply standing beside him. The farm did not rush aging. It honored it. Visitors continued to come, though fewer than before. Those who came did so quietly. They read the sign. They watched Bran from a distance. Many left thoughtful, changed in ways they could not fully explain. Tom came one morning just as the sun rose. Frost covered the grass. His breath formed small clouds in the air. Bran stood near the fence, waiting as if he knew. Tom placed his hand on Bran's neck and stayed there for a long time. No words felt necessary. The past no longer hurt the way it once did. Gratitude had replaced regret. Ben stood nearby, taller now. He brushed Bran gently, just like he always had. He did not cry. He smiled. "You did good," Ben said quietly. Bran shifted slightly, his ear turning toward the sound of the boy's voice. Liam visited later that same week. He stood with Anna near the paddock, watching Bran rest in the sun. "This place saved more than one life," Liam said. Anna nodded. "Yes, it did." They spoke about change, about how it often began with something small. A pause. A question. A moment of care. As winter deepened, Bran slowed further. He ate less. He rested more. Anna and Paul stayed close, adjusting his care day by day. There was no fear in the air, only awareness. One evening, the sky turned soft pink as the sun lowered. Bran stood for a while, looking out over the field. The wind moved gently through his mane. Birds settled into quiet. Anna stood nearby, her hands folded. She felt a deep calm settle over the place. Bran lowered himself carefully onto the straw inside the shelter. He breathed slowly. The sounds around him softened. There was no struggle, no alarm, only stillness. Those who loved him stayed close, respecting the silence. By morning, Bran was still. The farm did not rush. They stood together, honoring the life that had passed. A life of service. A life of patience. A life that had nearly ended unseen, but instead was remembered. News traveled quietly. Tom came with May and Ben. Liam came later that day. They stood in the field where Bran had spent his last seasons. The space felt full, not empty. Paul placed a simple marker near the oak tree at the edge of the pasture. No grand words. Just a name and the years of a long life. Bran. In the weeks that followed, the farm continued its work. New visitors came. New lessons were shared. Bran's story became part of the foundation of the place. Children listened closely when Anna spoke. They learned that strength was not only found in power, but in gentleness. That history could live quietly. That paying attention mattered. Tom returned to his own land with a lighter heart. He carried Bran's memory not as a burden, but as guidance. He worked differently now. He noticed more. Liam carried the lesson forward as well. He trained new workers. He taught them to slow down, to look twice, to ask. Years later, when people spoke of the Shire horse who was nearly lost, they did not speak of tragedy. They spoke of care. They spoke of a pause that changed everything. Bran's life did not end in a place of fear. It ended in peace, in open land, in quiet company. His story lived on, not because of how close he came to the end, but because of how many people chose to stop and care. And in that way, Bran never truly left. He remained in the fields, in the lessons, and in every moment someone chose compassion over haste. His fate was changed forever. And so were theirs.